Good evening, and today I'm going to be talking about schizophrenia. So, we've all heard of that TV series Criminal Minds that's known for the different murder mysteries and all the kidnappings and all that stuff. But in particular, I'm going to talk about the schizophrenia. So, Spencer's mom, Diana, had developed schizophrenia when Spencer was a little boy that tore apart their whole family. To where his dad left, to where Diana had to raise Spencer on her own, which made him and her suffer for the long run throughout the series. I will inform the audience today on the diagnosing of schizophrenia, living with schizophrenia, and the complications slash worries of having schizophrenia. So people have family members that suffer with schizophrenia. Their everyday lives that they used to have is washed away by a disorder that has no cure. People who develop schizophrenia have affected lives that interfere with the ability to think, feel, and behave properly. So, schizophrenia is a psychological disorder and is usually described in the terms of positive and negative symptoms. According to physical appearance and poor hygiene patterns, the evidence of schizophrenic illness by Nazia Nawaz and Sawida Farhana have summarized the positive symptoms and the negative symptoms of having schizophrenia. The positive symptoms are a good thing because they add on to like the diagnosis and what they need to look out for, which is the hallucinations, delusions, and repetitive movements. The negative, which is a takeaway, means that the disorder is progressing, which is a bad thing, and they show no emotion, difficulty talking, or the withdrawal from society, which is a bad thing. Also, the same two develop checklists with poor hygiene and physical appearances, and this was they based on diagnosing schizophrenia with. So it was the untidiness, the dirtiness, the messiness, if they were barefooted all the time, the different shoes or different socks, so like they didn't match at any time. And the buttons, if they were open, so like a button t-shirt was open, or buttons were missing from any type of clothing. And a guy named Charles Newick developed an MMPI, which is also known as a Minnesota Multi-Phase Personality Inventory, which assesses personality traits and psychopathology, and it always tested people who are suspected of a mental health illness or clinical issues. And this test is where he experimented that it was futile or pointless because you can't really diagnose schizophrenia. You can, but it's very hard because there's no treatment, or you can't, or you have to like take a while to run tests to see if somebody has schizophrenia. My second point is living with schizophrenia. The illness affects all areas of functioning and impairs basic living skills. So, in Living with a Disability, a perspective on disability and people who are living with schizophrenia by Shalala Raj says that a person, they can't get a job because the complications to where they suffer, or sometimes they hallucinate and then they get off and go places. The observation, because they have to stay under observation 24/7 because they don't want them to hurt themselves over something that they can't control, and then they have to depend on someone to take care of them because they can't live by themselves. They're dependent people, they can't be independent. Also, they have to learn the warning signs of a relapse and have a plan of action to deal with those symptoms by psych guides, which is restless sleep, loss of interest, feeling tense or fearful, or the difficulty of coping with their everyday task, which is hard because living with the schizophrenia is hard for people because they're used to doing things on their own, they're used to doing everything by themselves, and once they develop this disorder, they have to depend on other people, which is a very hard thing for them to adjust to. And usually an individual who has been released from a treatment for schizophrenia will be released into the hands of a family member, also by psych guides, because people They're usually get released into the hands of family members, but if family members can't take them, then a nurse will watch them and observe them. And lastly, the complications of having schizophrenia by the Mayo Clinic is suicide, suicide attempts, and thoughts of suicide, abuse of alcohol or other drugs, including nicotine, and health and medical problems. In conclusion, people living with a schizophrenia struggle day to day with decisions on how to live their daily, everyday lives. Schizophrenia affects the activities of daily living, with the person being confused and their thoughts made disruptive or unbelieving, with their feelings being monotone or likely no one is there. Think about people living with schizophrenia in their everyday lives, and how will this affect you if you develop it? Thank you.